The hall of the Galactic Academy was immense, its ceiling stretching far above where any eye could see. Light from distant stars filtered through the massive windows, painting the polished floor with soft multicolored beams. Students from dozens of species filled the hall, sitting in neat rows. Each species had its own form of chair, some floating, some resting on the floor, and others resembling the natural environments of their homeworlds. The chatter of thousands of beings filled the space, a mix of clicks, hums, roars, and whispers. It was a sound that would have overwhelmed most newcomers, but the instructor did not seem to notice. At the front of the hall, on a raised platform, stood the instructor, Varen. His appearance alone commanded attention. 4 eyes, sharp and knowing, glowed faintly under the dim lights. His skin shifted color depending on his mood, a soft iridescent gray now, signaling calm authority. His voice carried through the hall without the need for amplification, deep and resonant, each word precise. "Attention," he said, and the hall fell silent instantly. No whispers, no movement, not even the slightest shuffle of a claw or hand. "Today we discuss a war that shaped the cosmos, a war that left no species standing, a war that erased civilizations and shattered entire systems. We call it the Prime War." Varen's gaze swept across the room. He paused at the human section, where a small group of humans sat, their pale skin and ordinary features seemingly fragile compared to the armored, scaled, or tentacled beings around them. Among them was Mira, a young human cadet who had volunteered for this academy on her own will. Her brown eyes scanned the hall with quiet curiosity, and though she appeared small and ordinary, a strange determination burned in her chest. The instructor continued, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The Prime War was unlike anything that has come before or since. It consumed stars. It shattered planets. Entire fleets disappeared into the void. No species survived its full force, none. Listen closely, for this is not speculation. This is the truth written into the history of the galaxy itself." He projected images above the platform, worlds aflame, cities crushed by explosions, starships burning as they collided in the vacuum. Species that had once thrived now reduced to shadows. The images were vivid, almost too real, as if the students were witnessing the destruction firsthand. Some species trembled. Others leaned forward, eager to absorb every detail. Varen's voice took on a harsher tone. Every species that faced the Prime War failed. They lacked the resilience. They lacked the ability to endure when the universe itself turned against them. They were intelligent, yes, but intelligence alone cannot prevent extinction. Mira watched silently. Her heart beat faster. She could feel the tension of the hall, the weight of generations of belief pressing down on everyone, and yet a small voice inside her mind whispered something defiant, something that contradicted everything the instructor was saying. No species survived. She remembered the stories her grandparents had told her. Tales of fire and darkness, of hunger and despair, but also of survival, of humans rising from the ashes of wars that should have ended them. Her people had endured wars so vast that the very continents had changed shape. Her people had survived, rebuilt, and learned. She leaned slightly forward, her voice almost a whisper to herself. "We did." It was soft, a mere breath of sound. The kind of sound that would usually be swallowed by the hall, yet somehow it carried. Varen paused mid-sentence. The room seemed to hush around her whisper. Heads turned, eyes focused on the small human who had dared to speak. "What did you say, human?" Varen's 4 eyes glowed brighter, fixing on her. His voice was calm but carried a dangerous curiosity. Mira straightened in her seat. Her voice was small but steady. "You said no species survived the Prime War, but humanity did. We endured. We rebuilt. We became stronger because we refused to give up." The hall erupted into murmurs. Some of the students whispered to one another, astonished. Humans were not widely known for their history in galactic conflicts. They were considered young, fragile, and inexperienced. Most species thought them lucky to have survived their early centuries, let alone a war that Varen described as absolute destruction. Varen's expression was unreadable. He stepped forward, his iridescent skin flickering between colors as he processed the human's words. "You speak of survival against impossible odds. Do you claim your kind lived through the Prime War itself?" Mira nodded. "Not your version of the Prime War, but ours. Long ago, our planet faced wars that could have ended all life. Cities fell, oceans boiled, and skies burned. Billions died, and yet we rebuilt. We learned from our mistakes. That is why we are here today, The instructor studied her. His many years had never produced a student who challenged him with such certainty. Most students accepted what he said without question. Some species even worshipped his knowledge as absolute. But this small human, this fragile-looking being, spoke as if she carried the proof of centuries within her voice. "Proof?" Varen asked. "You offer no evidence. You offer only words. And yet words are not enough to convince the galaxy." Mira's eyes did not waver. "Words are the beginning. Evidence is the memory we carry. Our stories, our history, our people, they are proof that we survived, that we endured, and that is something you cannot erase with images of destruction." A low hum of agreement rose from some students. Others shook their heads, unwilling to accept that one human could contradict the accumulated knowledge of the Academy. Varen raised a hand, silencing the murmurs instantly. "Very well," he said. "If what you claim is true human, then perhaps the history of the galaxy requires re-evaluation. Perhaps there are gaps even in the chronicles of the Prime War. But one voice does not rewrite millennia of recorded knowledge." Mira did not flinch. "Then let me show you. Let me show the truth of what humans endured and how we rose from the ashes of wars that should have ended us." Varen tilted his head. He had not expected defiance. He had expected silence or fear or confusion. Instead, he found resolve. "You will have your opportunity," he said slowly. "But understand this. Many have claimed survival before you. None have proven it. You will need more than words. You will need history. You will need evidence. And even then your claim will be questioned by every mind in this hall." Mira nodded. "I understand. And I am ready." The rest of the lecture continued, but Mira's words had already planted a seed of doubt. Some students stared at her with newfound curiosity. Others, from species that had never survived much conflict, wondered if perhaps the instructor had been wrong all along. Varen continued to speak of the Prime War, showing more images of destruction, explaining the tactics that led to extinction. He described entire fleets annihilated in single battles, worlds collapsing under nuclear fire, and civilizations crumbling under their own failures. Yet all Mira could think of were her people. She thought of the great wars humans had survived on Earth, of cities rebuilt after being burned, of communities forming in the most unlikely places. She remembered the stories of her ancestors who had refused to surrender, who had carried the spark of hope through the darkest nights. That spark had not died. It had grown, and it lived now in her. By the end of the lecture, Varen turned to the students. "Remember this lesson," he said. "The Prime War is the ultimate test of a species. No species has endured it, and history shows that survival is impossible when faced with the full force of cosmic destruction." Mira remained seated, her hands folded in her lap, a quiet determination in her eyes. She whispered again, only to herself, "We did. We survived, and we will prove it." When the students left the hall, conversations buzzed around Mira's words. Some laughed, dismissing her claims as human arrogance. Others paused, considering the possibility that perhaps the universe's history was not as complete as they had believed. And Varen, walking back to his chamber, could not shake the feeling that this human cadet might be right. History had taught him that no species survived the Prime War. Every record, every story, every archive confirmed it, and yet, in Mira's voice, in her unwavering eyes, he sensed a truth that challenged everything he knew. The Prime War was not just about destruction, Varen thought. It was about choice. It was about the will to survive. And perhaps, just perhaps, this fragile human held the key to rewriting history. As Mira left the Academy Hall, she did not smile. She did not boast. She simply walked with purpose, feeling the weight of generations of her people on her shoulders. The galaxy did not yet know the truth about humans, but soon it would, and in that truth lay a power far greater than any weapon, any fleet, or any civilization. The power of endurance, the power of hope, the power that had carried humans through the worst wars in history and brought them to the stars. The hall of the Galactic Academy had emptied, but the echo of Mira's whisper lingered like a spark in the air. Some students returned to their chambers with curiosity, while others dismissed the human's words as youthful arrogance. But a small faction, mostly younger species, began discussing what they had just heard. If one human truly survived a war that no species could endure, what did that mean for everything they had been taught? Mira walked calmly through the academy corridors. The walls glimmered faintly with the light of distant stars, reflecting the pride and history of countless civilizations. She kept her head high, though her mind raced with anticipation. The instructor had promised an opportunity to prove herself. She knew that proving humanity's survival would not be easy. Most beings in this galaxy assumed the records of the Prime War were complete. Most believed that no species could withstand such devastation, but humans had a history unlike any other. As she approached the chamber where Varen retreated after the lecture, she noticed a figure waiting outside. It was Tolan, a young Xernian, student with 4 limbs and translucent skin that shimmered with the colors of emotion. He blinked his large eyes at Mira and asked softly, "Are you serious? You claim your species survived the Prime War? Even my parents said no one could." Mira smiled faintly. "I am serious. Humanity survived because we do not accept defeat. Even when everything is lost, we find a way to rise again. That is why we are here." Tolan's skin flickered between hues of disbelief and admiration. You must be very strong." Mira shook her head. "Not strong in the way you think. Strength comes from persistence, from refusing to give up, from learning from our mistakes. That is how humans survived." Tolan looked at her, fascinated. "Then you will prove it to the instructor?" Mira nodded. "Yes. I have to show him what humans endured, not just the wars but the will to survive after them. That is the real proof." Inside the chamber, Varen paced slowly. His mind was restless, troubled by the small human's words. For centuries he had taught the Prime War as a lesson of ultimate destruction, a war so terrible that survival was impossible. Every record he had studied confirmed it. Yet Mira had spoken with a certainty that unsettled him. She did not argue. She did not hesitate. She simply stated a truth he could not ignore. Varen stopped pacing and stared at the holomap on the wall. It displayed the remnants of civilizations that had fallen in the Prime War, clusters of stars without planets, fleets annihilated in vast space battles, and entire species reduced to myths. He touched one record at random, then another, trying to reconcile the human's claim with the evidence before him. None of it explained how any species could have survived. None except the one small voice in the hall. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Mira stepped inside, standing respectfully at the edge of the chamber. Her eyes were steady, calm, and filled with determination. "You wish to see me, Instructor?" she asked. Varen regarded her quietly. "Sit, human. I have questions." Mira remained standing until he gestured. She seated herself carefully, her posture upright. She could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy and analytical, as if he were trying to read not just her words but the truth in her mind. "You claim humanity survived the Prime War," Varen said finally. "Do you understand how extraordinary that statement is?" "I do," Mira replied, "and I can prove it. But first, you must understand the way humans endure. We do not survive because we are the strongest. We survive because we refuse to surrender. We survive because we carry the memory of those who came before us. Every generation learns from the mistakes of the last. Every failure teaches us how to rise again." Varen's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "You speak in ideals. Words alone do not prove survival. Survival requires evidence." Mira nodded. "I have evidence. Not just in records, but in stories, in ruins, in the history of our people. I can show you the proof of how humans survived against impossible odds." The instructor considered her carefully. He had never met a species so young, so fragile in appearance, yet so fearless in conviction. Most students relied on data, on fleets, on technological advantage. They spoke of battles and tactics, not of will and endurance. Mira's confidence unsettled him, not because she threatened him, but because she challenged the very principles he had taught for generations. "Very well," Varen said. "You will demonstrate your claim. You will present your history and your evidence, but be warned. If you fail, not only will your claim be dismissed, but your species' reputation will be questioned in every academy and council across the galaxy." "I understand." Mira replied. And I am ready. For the next several days, Mira worked with the Academy's archives, accessing human records stored in distant servers and secure holodomes. Many of the records had been damaged or lost over time, but what remained was enough to tell the story of survival. She selected images and records of human cities rebuilt after catastrophic wars, holograms of fleets that had survived against overwhelming enemies, and stories of ordinary humans performing acts of courage and determination during times of despair. Varen observed her carefully during the preparations. Some days he challenged her interpretations, asking her why certain evidence proved survival. Each time, Mira answered with clarity, explaining not just what humans had done, but why they had endured. She spoke of values, of choices, of the way humans inspired one another to keep moving forward even when all seemed lost. Other students watched her work. Some were skeptical, unwilling to believe that humans could teach a lesson in survival. Others were quietly impressed, noting how her determination seemed to radiate in the room. Even Tolan came by frequently, fascinated by the way a single human could hold such conviction. The day of the demonstration arrived. The hall was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, from species known for their wisdom, strength, and longevity. The council had agreed to witness Mira's presentation. Some sat with arms crossed, some with heads tilted in curiosity, and some whispered quietly among themselves. Mira stepped onto the platform. The lights dimmed, and the first images of human history flickered above her. She did not rely on grand gestures or flashy technology. She relied on the truth of her people. These are the stories of humanity, she began. Not tales of conquest, not myths of gods, but the real experiences of ordinary people who faced extraordinary challenges. We survived wars that should have ended us. We rebuilt cities after they were destroyed. We survived famine, disease, and disasters that reshaped our planet. And we did not survive by chance. We survived by learning, by persisting, and by refusing to give up. She spoke of the wars that had nearly destroyed Earth, wars that consumed continents and reshaped oceans. She spoke of communities that rebuilt from rubble, of fleets that survived against technologically superior enemies, and of leaders who inspired hope in impossible situations. Every image she displayed, every story she told resonated with the audience. Varen watched silently. He could not ignore what he saw. The evidence was undeniable. These were not exaggerated legends. These were records of a species that had endured near impossible odds and emerged stronger. One of the council members, a tall crystalline being named Saren, spoke next. Human, how do you explain this survival? Most species would have perished. Most species would have given up when faced with such destruction. Mira's eyes were steady. Survival is not about power. It is about choice. When everything is lost, when all seems hopeless, humans choose to rise again. We choose to carry the memory of those who fell. We choose to rebuild. That is why we survived. A low murmur ran through the hall. Some species looked thoughtful, some skeptical, but all were listening. Varen could feel the weight of history shifting around him. He had taught that no species survived the Prime War, and yet, here was a human proving that history could be challenged, rewritten, and understood in a new way. By the end of the presentation, the hall was silent. The council members conferred quietly, and even Varen remained thoughtful. Mira stepped down from the platform, her heart steady, her mind focused. She had not spoken arrogantly or sought glory. She had told the truth. Later, in a private moment, Varen approached her. Human, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Your people may have something the galaxy has long overlooked. Perhaps survival is not about avoiding destruction, but about what a species does after the destruction has occurred. You have shown me that humans do not merely endure. They rise, and in that rising they rewrite what is possible. Mira bowed slightly. That is all we ever do. We learn, we endure, and we rise again. Varen studied her for a long moment. Then perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn the truth. Humanity survived, And in surviving, it teaches every other species a lesson in hope, endurance, and the power of the will to continue. Mira nodded. She knew the work was far from over. The galaxy had much to learn. Many would doubt. Many would resist the idea that a species could survive the Prime War. But she also knew that once the truth was seen, it could never be undone. That night, as the stars outside the academy shimmered, Mira reflected on what had happened. She felt the weight of her ancestors, the lessons of survival they had passed down, and the responsibility of showing the galaxy that humans were different. The academy was quiet that evening, the distant stars outside the vast windows casting soft light across the polished floors. Most students had returned to their quarters, still whispering about the human cadet who claimed her species survived the Prime War. Mira, however, was not finished. She had been summoned to Varen's private chamber, a place few students ever entered. The instructor's chambers were lined with holomaps, archives, and artifacts from civilizations long gone. The air was heavy with the weight of history. Varen sat behind a wide table, his many eyes focused on Mira. "You have impressed me, human," he began, his voice quieter than it had been in the hall. "But stories alone do not convince a being like me. Show me proof. Show me the evidence that humanity truly survived when all others failed." Mira nodded. "I will, Instructor. I will show you what humans endured. Not just the battles, but the world we rebuilt afterward. That is the true story of our survival." She tapped a small device in her hand, and the room filled with holographic images. Cities in flames appeared first. Skyscrapers collapsed into rubble, bridges broken, streets filled with smoke and fire. Then came images of human fleets in battle, ships damaged but not destroyed, crews working together to survive against overwhelming odds. Finally, she projected images of ordinary humans, farmers, teachers, engineers, working to rebuild their communities, clearing debris, planting crops, and repairing homes. Varen watched silently. Each image challenged everything he had taught. The records of the Prime War showed only destruction, loss, and extinction. Yet these humans, a species considered fragile by the galaxy, had endured. They had survived devastation that should have ended them. "These images," Mira said, "are not just records of destruction. They are records of endurance. Humanity survived because we refused to surrender. Every challenge, every loss, every obstacle taught us something. We adapted, we learned, and we rose again. That is why we survived." Varen leaned forward. "And you claim this is the same as surviving the Prime War?" Mira's eyes were steady. "Not exactly. The Prime War is universal, yes, but survival is about more than avoiding destruction. It is about the will to continue. Even when everything seems lost. Humans faced destruction, extinction, and despair, and yet we continued. That is what makes us survivors." The instructor's gaze softened slightly. He had spent centuries teaching that no species survived total war, believing the lesson to be absolute. Yet here was a human who did not just speak of survival. She demonstrated it. Through images, records, and the stories of her people, she proved something that logic alone could not explain. Varen gestured toward the holograms. "Show me more. Show me how your species endured after the fire, after the chaos. How did humanity continue when so much was lost?" Mira nodded and brought up another series of images. They showed towns rising from the rubble, children learning in temporary classrooms, engineers rebuilding infrastructure, and communities forming new governments to maintain order. Humans had survived famine, disease, and natural disasters that had been worsened by war. Every image told a story of courage, of persistence, of ordinary beings achieving extraordinary things. "These are the real records of human survival," Mira said. "We were not saved by advanced technology or powerful fleets alone. We were saved by the choices we made. Every human who refused to give up, every person who helped another, every community that rebuilt. These are the reasons we endured. That is our true strength." Varen's many eyes reflected the holograms. He had taught that the Prime War was an end, a final test no species could pass, and yet here was a species proving otherwise, not through dominance but through willpower, ingenuity, and cooperation. He asked carefully, "And what of those who did not survive? How did you continue when billions perished?" Mira's expression grew somber. "We remember them. Survival is not forgetting. It is carrying forward the lessons and memories of those who came before. Every loss teaches us something. Every failure is a step toward endurance. Humanity survived because we honored the fallen by building a future. The instructor leaned back, his thoughts heavy. No species he had studied had approached survival in this way. Others relied on weaponry, strategies, or sheer numbers. Humans relied on something deeper, a refusal to surrender. It was a lesson not recorded in any history book or holomap. It was living proof carried in their actions and their choices. Mira continued, her voice steady. We rebuilt governments, systems, and communities. We restored ecosystems. We preserved knowledge. We carried the stories of those who fought and those who sacrificed. That is how humans endured. Not through luck, not through power, but through determination, learning, and hope. Varen studied her. You speak of ideals, human. But ideals alone cannot preserve a species. They are not alone, Mira replied. They are strengthened by action. Every human, every community, every generation contributed to survival. We learned from our mistakes. We adapted. That is how we overcame challenges that should have ended us. That is how we survived, and that is how we endure to this day. The instructor was silent for a long time. His mind, trained for centuries to accept extinction as inevitable, struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. These humans had faced disasters, wars, and chaos on a scale that rivaled the Prime War. They had survived, rebuilt, and advanced, all while carrying the lessons of their history forward. He asked finally, "And this is why you are here today?" Mira nodded. Yes, humanity has risen, learned, and endured. We are here to show the galaxy that survival is possible, that hope, determination, and unity can withstand even the greatest challenges. That is why humans are different. That is why we endured when others would have perished. Varen leaned forward. Your evidence is compelling. Yet the galaxy will demand more. They will challenge your claim. They will doubt that a species as young as yours could survive such trials. I am ready, Mira said. They will see our history, our choices, and our endurance. The truth cannot be hidden forever. Humanity survived. We carry the proof in our actions, our culture, and our people. Varen's eyes softened further. For the first time, he realized that survival was more than strength or technology. It was something deeper. It was choice, will, and persistence. Humanity had endured not because they avoided danger, but because they chose to rise every time they fell. You have shown me much, human, he said. Perhaps I have underestimated your species. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated what is possible. Your survival is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of determination. That is a lesson every species should learn. Mira bowed slightly. That is all we ask. That the galaxy understands what humans endured and what we can teach about survival. Varen paused, reflecting. You speak of humans, but your words apply to more than your species. They are lessons for every being that faces extinction. You show that survival is not just living, but rising with purpose, learning from failure and carrying hope forward. Mira smiled faintly. That is exactly what humans do, Instructor. That is why we survived the fire of our own wars. That is why we endured the worst challenges on our planet, and that is why we are here now, reaching for the stars. The chamber was silent for a moment, filled only with the faint hum of distant energy and the light of the holograms. Varen's eyes, which had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, softened. Perhaps the galaxy had judged humans too quickly. Perhaps survival was not just about avoiding death, but about embracing life after disaster. Then show me more, he said finally. Show me how humans rebuilt, how they carried their civilization forward. I wish to see the full scope of your endurance, human. Convince me that survival is not impossible when the will is strong. Mira nodded. She projected the next set of holograms. Images of human cities restored from ruins, schools reopened after destruction, and people working together to form new governments, rebuild economies, and protect knowledge. She showed how humans preserved the memory of those lost, how they honored their past while forging a future. Varen observed in silence, amazed at the resilience displayed before him. Every image, every story, every act of determination confirmed what Mira had said. Humanity had endured against impossible odds, and they had done so through unity, learning, and persistence. At the end of the session, Varen finally spoke. I see it now. Humans survived because they chose to survive. They endured because they refused to surrender. That is a lesson the galaxy has not learned. Perhaps it is time that it did, Mira nodded. Yes, Instructor. And humanity will show the galaxy what it means to endure, to rebuild, and to rise again. We are not perfect, but we survive. And that is enough. Varen looked at her for a long moment, then finally said, "You have given me much to consider, human. Perhaps your species will not only survive the Prime War, but also teach the galaxy how to endure it. Perhaps humanity is more than a young species. Perhaps you are a beacon of hope." Mira smiled quietly. The galaxy would doubt, the galaxy would challenge, but the truth was clear. Humans had survived fire, destruction, and despair, and they would continue to endure, teaching the galaxy a lesson in strength, will, and hope that no war could erase. The day of the great debate arrived. The Galactic Academy's main hall was filled to capacity with species from every corner of the galaxy. Delegates, scholars, and students had gathered, eager to witness what was being called the human challenge to history. The hall itself was enormous, its walls lined with historical records, star maps, and the symbols of extinct civilizations. A soft glow from the star systems beyond the windows bathed the room in shifting colors. The air was thick with anticipation. Mira stood backstage, her hands folded in front of her. She could feel the weight of her ancestors in her heart and the eyes of the galaxy upon her. Beside her, other students whispered nervously, unsure how one human could challenge the established history of the universe. Instructor Varen approached her quietly. "Human," he said, "today you will not only defend your species' survival, you will challenge the galaxy's understanding of history itself. Be precise, be truthful, and do not falter. If you succeed, you will rewrite what the Academy teaches for generations." Mira nodded. "I understand, Instructor. I will not fail." Varen studied her for a long moment. "Do not underestimate the Council. Many will oppose you. Many will not believe you, no matter what evidence you provide. But perhaps some will listen. That is enough." The platform rose slowly from the center of the hall. Mira stepped onto it. She looked out over the Council, a mix of species with varying forms, colors, and expressions. Some had wings folded against their backs. Others had glowing tendrils, and many had eyes reflecting centuries of wisdom. They watched her expectantly, some with skepticism, some with curiosity, and others with outright disbelief. Varen raised his hand, signaling the beginning of the debate. "Representatives of the Council," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "We are here to hear claims from one human cadet. She asserts that her species survived a series of wars and disasters that no other species endured. She claims that humanity is living proof of resilience in the face of destruction. Let us hear her account." Mira took a deep breath. "Esteemed Council members," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I speak today not to glorify humanity, but to show the truth of our survival. Humanity faced wars and disasters that should have ended us. Entire cities were destroyed, billions perished, and yet we endured. We rebuilt our homes, our communities, and our knowledge. We preserved the lessons of the past while forging a future. This is why we survived. This is why we endure today." She raised a holographic image of Earth from centuries past, scarred by fire and destruction. Cities were in ruins, skies filled with smoke, and oceans shifted with unnatural tides. "These are not myths," she said. "These are records of human endurance. Our people did not wait for help. We acted, we learned, we adapted. Every generation carried the memory of those who fell and the hope of those who survived." The Council murmured among themselves. Some members whispered to their neighbors, questioning the humans' claims. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the evidence presented. Varen observed quietly, seeing the tension in the room. He knew the Council would not accept the humans' claims easily, but he also knew that truth had a way of revealing itself. One of the Council members, a crystalline being named Saren, spoke first. "Human, your words are compelling, but words alone cannot change the records of history. Evidence is required. How do you prove that your species survived what no other species could endure?" Mira nodded and projected a series of images and records. Holograms of human fleets engaged in defensive battles appeared first, showing coordination, strategy, and courage against overwhelming odds. Then came images of rebuilt cities, with families working together to restore homes, farms, and communities. Finally, she projected records of human archives preserved through fire and flood, showing the steps humanity took to maintain knowledge and culture. "These records show not just survival, but growth," Mira said. "Humanity learned from each challenge. We preserved our knowledge, rebuilt our societies, and ensured that every generation was stronger and wiser than the last. Survival is not merely living. Survival is rising from disaster, carrying forward the lessons of the past and preparing for the future. Another council member, a reptilian scholar with scales reflecting the dim light, leaned forward. And what of those who did not survive? You speak of billions perishing. How can you call humanity's survival complete when so much was lost? Mira's expression grew serious. Survival does not require perfection. It requires persistence. Humanity honored the fallen by rebuilding. We remembered their sacrifices and ensured that their struggles were not in vain. Every loss taught us a lesson. Every failure strengthened our resolve. That is how we endured. That is how we survived. The council remained quiet, some skeptical, others thoughtful. Varen observed closely. This debate was not just about history. It was about a principle. Whether a species could truly endure the impossible. Mira's calm confidence and evidence were changing the minds of some members, even if others refused to accept it yet. Mira continued. Look at our actions, not just our words. When humanity faced global wars that destroyed continents, we did not give in. We rebuilt societies, restored infrastructure, and preserved knowledge. When disease and famine struck after destruction, we supported each other, finding solutions and innovations that allowed us to survive. This is the reason humanity lives today. She paused, letting her words sink in. We survived not because we were the strongest or the most numerous or the most technologically advanced. We survived because we refused to surrender, because we chose to endure. That is a lesson every species can learn from humanity. A murmur ran through the hall. Some students whispered to each other in awe. Some council members exchanged looks, realizing the humans' argument had merit. Varen noted how even the most skeptical species seemed unsettled by the truth in Mira's voice. Saren, the crystalline scholar, spoke again. Human, you show courage and evidence, but surviving isolated events is not the same as surviving a prime war. How do you equate your history with the destruction that no species has ever survived? Mira's gaze did not waver. The Prime War is not just a test of power or technology. It is a test of will. Humanity faced destruction on a scale that should have ended us. Entire nations were destroyed, billions died, yet we endured. That is the essence of survival. Any species, given the will and determination, can rise after disaster. Humanity proves it is possible. The hall was silent for several long moments. Even the most skeptical council members found it difficult to argue against the evidence of human endurance. Varen finally spoke, his voice calm but heavy with thought. Perhaps we have judged survival too narrowly. Perhaps endurance is not just avoiding destruction, but rising after it. Perhaps humanity has shown us a different path to survival, one that relies on will, learning, and unity. Mira nodded. Yes, Instructor. That is what humans teach. Survival is not just about strength. It is about the choices we make when faced with destruction. It is about persistence, hope, and the determination to rise again. The debate continued for hours. Mira answered questions about human history, strategies, and values. She spoke of how humans rebuilt governments, restored ecosystems, and preserved knowledge. She explained how cooperation, innovation, and compassion had allowed humanity to endure disasters that should have ended them. Each answer strengthened her case and inspired some members of the council to reconsider what they thought was impossible. By the end of the day, the debate had shifted. What began as a challenge to history became a lesson for the galaxy. Humanity was not only surviving, it was teaching the universe what it meant to endure. Varen approached Mira as she stepped down from the platform. You have done more than I expected, he said. You have not only defended your species, but also shown the galaxy a new way to think about survival. Perhaps the records of the Prime War need revision. Perhaps survival is not impossible when the will is strong. Mira smiled faintly. That is all we wanted. The galaxy must know that survival is not just about strength or luck. It is about hope, determination, and persistence. Humans survived, and that is the lesson we bring to the stars. The council members began to leave, still whispering among themselves. Some were convinced, some skeptical, but all had been forced to consider a possibility they had never entertained. That a species thought fragile could endure the impossible and teach the galaxy about hope. As the hall emptied, Mira looked out the vast windows at the stars beyond. She thought of her ancestors, of the struggles humanity had endured, and of the future her people would continue to build. The galaxy would challenge them, question them, and perhaps doubt them. But one thing was certain: humanity had survived. Humanity had endured. And humanity had a lesson to teach the stars. Varen walked beside her quietly. You have given the galaxy more than evidence, human. You have given it inspiration. Perhaps other species will learn from your example. Perhaps the lesson of endurance will spread, and the universe will remember that no war, no disaster, no destruction is absolute when a species chooses to rise. Mira nodded. That is what we always do. We rise, we endure, and we teach what it means to survive. Humanity has done it before, and we will do it again. Always. The grand hall of the Galactic Academy was quieter than usual that morning, but tension and curiosity filled the air like an electric charge. Word had spread across the galaxy about the human cadet who had challenged centuries of accepted history. Species from dozens of worlds had gathered, some arriving specifically to witness the final verdict. The Council of Elders, scholars, and representatives waited for Instructor Varen to address the assembly. He had called a special session to formally review the evidence and the arguments presented by Mira, the human cadet. Mira stood at the center of the hall, her posture calm but confident. Her gaze swept across the room, noting faces filled with skepticism, curiosity, and even awe. She remembered the long journey to this moment. The lectures, the private sessions with Varen, the endless hours of research and preparation. Every step had led to this, the moment when humanity's truth would finally be recognized by the galaxy. Varen approached the podium, his many eyes reflecting the soft glow of the starlight. His voice, deep and resonant, carried across the hall. Representatives of the Galactic Council, students and scholars, he began. We have gathered here to reconsider a principle that has guided our understanding of history for centuries. The Prime War, a universal conflict of unparalleled magnitude, was long thought to leave no survivors. Every record, every archive, every account confirmed this as absolute truth. Yet one species, the humans, challenges that belief with compelling evidence and reasoned argument. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some whispered doubts, others expressed surprise, and a few simply watched in silence, realizing that the history they had studied for so long might need to be rewritten. Varen gestured toward Mira. Human cadet, you have presented a case that defies conventional understanding. You have shown evidence, recounted history, and explained the principles that allowed your species to endure when all others fell. I now ask you to address the assembly one final time. Mira stepped forward. Her voice was clear, steady, and full of quiet confidence. Esteemed council members, representatives of the galaxy, I do not come to boast about humanity. I come to tell the truth of our survival. Humans faced wars and disasters that should have ended our species. Cities were destroyed, billions perished, and yet we endured. We rebuilt our homes, our societies, and our knowledge. We honored those who fell, learned from our failures, and persisted when despair threatened to overwhelm us. That is why we survived. That is why humanity continues to exist today. She projected a final series of images. Holograms of human cities restored from rubble appeared first, showing citizens working together to rebuild homes, schools, and governments. Then came holograms of fleets navigating through dangerous space, coordinating and surviving against stronger adversaries. Finally, she displayed images of scientific achievements, cultural milestones, and records preserved through disasters, demonstrating the resilience of human knowledge and ingenuity. These are not myths or legends, Mira said. These are records of human endurance. We survived because we refused to surrender. We survived because we chose to rise again after every failure. We survived because we learned from every mistake and supported one another in the face of impossible odds. This is our truth, and it is a lesson for every species in the galaxy. Survival is not about being the strongest or the most advanced. Survival is about persistence, hope, and the will to continue. The hall was silent. Even the most skeptical members of the council could not dismiss the evidence or the confidence in Mira's words. Instructor Varen, standing beside her, felt a shift in the assembly. What had begun as doubt and disbelief was slowly turning into recognition. Humanity's story of survival was undeniable. One of the council members, a long-lived species with silver feathers and deep violet eyes, spoke next. Human, your evidence is remarkable. It challenges everything we believed about the Prime War. But how can the galaxy be certain that your species' experience is not an anomaly? How can we know that humans alone possess the qualities required to survive such destruction? Mira's eyes were steady. The galaxy has long misunderstood survival. Survival is not about rarity or strength alone. Survival is about choice, perseverance, and learning from mistakes. Humans are not unique because we are stronger. We are unique because we refuse to surrender, and because we honor the past while building the future. Any species can survive if it embraces these principles. Humans are proof that it is possible. Another council member, a crystalline being named Saren, who had been skeptical throughout the debates, nodded slowly. Perhaps the lesson is not just that humans survived, but that all species can endure if they learn the true meaning of survival. Humanity's endurance is a beacon for all of us. Mira smiled faintly. Yes, Saren, that is the truth. Survival is not about avoiding conflict or escaping danger. It is about rising after loss, rebuilding what is broken, and teaching future generations to do the same. Humanity endured fire, destruction, and despair, and in doing so, we show the galaxy what is possible. Farron stepped forward, addressing the council with authority. I have spent centuries teaching that no species survived the Prime War. I have held this as truth. Yet standing here today, I see that humans defy that conclusion. They endured what others could not. They rebuilt what others abandoned. They persevered when others surrendered. Humanity's story challenges us to reconsider what survival truly means. The murmurs in the hall grew louder, but this time with excitement. Council members whispered to each other, some skeptical but curious, some inspired, and others already convinced. The truth of human endurance could not be ignored. Baron continued, his voice firm. From this day forward, the records of the Galactic Academy will be updated. The history of the Prime War will include humanity as the species that survived against all odds. Their endurance will be taught to future students as an example of hope, determination, and the power of the will to persist. Mira felt a quiet satisfaction. Humanity's survival, once doubted and dismissed, was now recognized by the galaxy, but more importantly, the lesson extended beyond mere recognition. It was a lesson of inspiration, one that could guide other species in the face of adversity. A young Xernian student approached her, eyes wide. Human, your story. It gives hope. Perhaps other species will learn from your endurance. Mira nodded. Yes, that is the goal. Humanity survived to show that hope and persistence are stronger than despair. We endure not just for ourselves, but to inspire others to rise when they face impossible odds. Varen turned toward the audience, his tone solemn. Let this day be remembered. Let humanity's survival be the standard by which all species measure endurance. They teach us that survival is not merely avoiding extinction, but rising after destruction, learning from failure, and carrying hope forward. This is the legacy of humans. The assembly rose in quiet reverence. Even species who had doubted the humans' claim now acknowledged the truth. Humanity had endured, and in doing so, it had rewritten the lesson of the Prime War. Mira stepped down from the platform, feeling the weight of the moment. She had not sought glory but truth. She had not come to boast, but to show what her species had endured. Humanity had survived wars, disasters, and despair. Humanity had risen again and again, and now the galaxy would understand why. As the hall emptied, Varen approached her one final time. Human, you have done more than I imagined. You have proven that survival is not about avoiding destruction, but about rising from it. Humanity has shown the galaxy the true meaning of endurance. You have rewritten history. Mira smiled softly. We only did what humans always do, Instructor. We rise, we endure, and we carry the lessons of the past into the future. That is how we survived, and that is how we will continue to survive. The stars outside the academy shimmered brightly, distant and eternal. Mira gazed at them and felt the weight of responsibility, but also the power of possibility. Humanity had survived fire, destruction, and despair. Humanity had endured where others had fallen. And humanity had taught the galaxy what true survival meant. From that day on, humanity's story became a cornerstone of the Academy's teachings. Students from every species learned that endurance was not merely a function of strength or technology. It was about the choices made when faced with destruction, the lessons learned from failure, and the will to rise again. Humanity had survived the impossible, and in doing so, it became a beacon for all species, and Mira, the human cadet who had dared to challenge centuries of belief, stood as a symbol of what was possible when determination, hope, and courage guided every step. In the end, the galaxy did not just recognize that humans survived the Prime War. The galaxy learned from humanity that survival was more than living. Survival was enduring, rising and teaching others to do the same. Humanity had whispered the truth to the stars, and the stars listened.